The Zelnari Empire was vast, its crystal towers rising high above the glowing city of Kareth. From a distance, the palace seemed to touch the stars. Its walls shimmered silver blue under the twin suns, and the streets below were alive with the hum of hovercrafts and the chatter of thousands of aliens. Within this great empire, life was a game of power, strength, and status. Princess Lyra was small. Compared to the towering Zelnari warriors, even her closest cousins seemed like giants. Her arms were slender, her legs delicate, and her frame barely reached the waist of most nobles. Her golden eyes, however, were sharp, intelligent, and curious. She had a mind that could unravel complex problems and a heart that cared deeply about others. Yet these qualities were invisible in a court that prized size, strength, and dominance above all else. From her earliest days, Lyra had known the sting of being ignored. When her older cousins trained in the arts of combat, she was left behind. When nobles boasted about victories in distant battles, she was overlooked. Even her tutors, impressed by her intelligence, often treated her gently, as if she were a fragile artifact rather than a person of potential. "Why do you waste your time in books, Lyra?" her cousin Theros once sneered, flexing his massive arms. "The Empire does not care for weaklings. Power belongs to those who can take it." Lyra did not answer. She simply returned to her studies, ignoring the laughter of her peers. Deep in her heart, she knew that strength came in many forms, not only in muscles but in courage, intelligence, and the ability to see what others missed. The Silent Flower. By the time Lyra reached adolescence, her reputation in the palace was set. The nobles whispered behind her back, calling her the Silent Flower. She was quiet, small, and delicate. She rarely attended feasts or social events unless required. When she did, she was treated as decoration rather than a participant. Warriors who sought to impress the court ignored her. Princes who were expected to woo princesses left her table without a glance. Even the youngest of her cousins teased her relentlessly. "Do you really think anyone will ever choose you?" they asked with cruel smiles. "Look at yourself, you are nothing." Lyra felt a familiar ache in her chest, but she refused to cry. She had learned long ago that tears did not change the world. Instead, she focused on what she could control, her mind. In the palace library, she pored over maps of distant planets, histories of interstellar civilizations, and studies of the stars. While others practiced swordplay and strength, she practiced knowledge and understanding. It was here, among the glowing crystal books and quiet whispers of past scholars, that Lyra felt most alive. She was invisible in the eyes of the court, but in the universe of knowledge she was a giant. Dreams beyond the palace, Lyra often imagined life beyond the palace walls. She wondered what it would be like to travel to other worlds, to meet beings who did not judge her by size or strength. She dreamed of sailing among the stars, discovering secrets hidden in the darkness, and learning from those who had lived differently. Her parents, the Emperor and Empress, noticed her curiosity but did not understand it. They loved her, but they could not see her mind. In their eyes, a princess's role was to marry, produce heirs, and inspire loyalty among the nobles. Her gentle nature and small size were considered weaknesses, not strengths. Yet Lyra did not despair. She believed that one day, someone would see her for who she truly was. Until then, she would wait, preparing herself quietly, learning, observing, and growing. The feast announcement one morning as the twin suns rose over the palace towers, a messenger arrived with unusual news. A delegation from a distant world, humans from the planet Earth, would be visiting the Zelnari Empire. It was the first time in history that humans were invited to the royal court. The nobles were excited. Some were curious, others skeptical. Humans were said to be smaller, weaker, and less advanced than the Zelnari, but they had survived the dangers of their home planet and had begun to explore space. The Emperor hoped this visit could open trade, knowledge, and alliances with humanity. The court buzzed with preparation. Feasts were arranged, halls were polished, and musicians practiced tirelessly. Nobles discussed which princesses would host the human delegation. Lyra, of course, was not mentioned. She was expected to attend the feast, but her presence was considered optional and ceremonial. As she walked through the halls, she overheard her cousins discussing the humans.
"They are tiny," Tharos said. "How can they possibly be of use to us?" "They might have tricks," another whispered, "but they are no match for the strength of the Zelnari." Lyra smiled faintly to herself. Perhaps strength was
not always what it seemed. A quiet observation. On the day of the feast, Lyra positioned herself near the balcony overlooking the main hall. The humans arrived, led by a tall man with calm eyes and confident steps. Even from a distance, she noticed something different about him. He did not carry himself with arrogance. He did not boast or flex his muscles. Yet there was a quiet confidence. In his movements, a sense of purpose that drew attention without effort. While the nobles laughed at his size, Daniel Hayes, the human leader, walked steadily, greeting the Emperor with respect. He did not falter when faced with sneers or mockery. He spoke carefully with a voice clear and calm. Lyra watched, fascinated. Here was someone who, like her, was judged by appearances but who carried himself with dignity and intelligence. Unlike the other nobles and warriors, he did not try to dominate or mock. Instead, he observed, listened, and responded thoughtfully. For the first time, Lyra felt a spark of hope. Perhaps there was someone in this vast empire who could see beyond appearances. The first meeting later in the feast, when the humans were seated, a discussion began about navigation through the Nabaris Void, a region of space dangerous to all travelers. Nobles spoke loudly, dismissing the human captain's ideas. "You speak of impossible paths," a Zelnari general said. "No ship can survive the storms of the void." Daniel listened quietly. When it was his turn to speak, he explained, a careful method of observation, study, and mapping that could allow ships to pass safely. He spoke not with arrogance but with reason. Lyra, her golden eyes bright, whispered to herself, "He is right." No one noticed her voice except him. Daniel turned slightly and gave a small nod, acknowledging her insight. She felt a thrill she had never known. For the first time, someone not only listened to her thoughts, but respected them. The nobles continued their discussions, oblivious to the small connection forming in the corner of the hall. Lyra and Daniel exchanged subtle glances and quiet gestures, sharing ideas without words. A silent connection. Throughout the evening, Lyra found herself drawn to Daniel's calm presence. Unlike the Zelnari, who valued size, strength, and bluster, he valued thought, courage, and observation. His small size did not make him weak. His intelligence and poise gave him strength that many Zelnari warriors lacked. She wondered what it would be like to speak openly with someone who understood her, who saw her not as a weak princess, but as a person with ideas and courage. Her heart fluttered at the thought, though she would never admit it aloud. When the feast ended, Lyra lingered in the hall, watching Daniel as he bowed politely to the Emperor and Empress. Then he looked toward the balcony and their eyes met. In that quiet instant, a bond was formed, a silent promise of understanding, courage, and the possibility of friendship beyond appearances. Dreams of the future. That night, in her small chamber, Lyra sat by the window and stared at the stars. She thought of the human captain, his calm confidence, and the way he had seen her when no one else had. She imagined a world where courage, wisdom, and heart mattered more than size or strength. Perhaps, she thought, the universe was bigger than the palace, bigger than the empire, bigger even than the prejudices of her people, and perhaps one day someone would see her for who she truly was, not for what she looked like. For now she would wait, study, and prepare. But deep inside, a spark had been lit, a hope that the silent flower could one day bloom in the light of understanding, courage, and recognition. And somewhere in the vast palace, Daniel Hayes had unknowingly planted that spark. The forgotten princess was no longer entirely invisible. The first step of a remarkable journey had begun. The great palace of the Zelnari Empire stood high above the shining city of Kareth. Its tall silver towers touched the sky, and its crystal walls glowed with a soft blue light at night. On this day, however, the palace was brighter than usual. Every corridor was filled with alien nobles preparing for the royal feast. Bright banners of green and gold were hung from the ceilings, and the sound of alien musicians echoed through the halls. The reason was simple: a new guest had arrived. For the first time in history, humans were invited to the royal court. Princess Lyra walked silently through the long balcony, watching the busy halls below. She was dressed in a flowing silver gown that matched her pale hair. Her golden eyes scanned the scene, but she felt the same loneliness as always. The other princesses stood together in groups, laughing and speaking proudly about which alien warriors would try to win their attention at the feast. Lyra, small and quiet, was ignored. To them, she was only the silent flower. Still, she could not hide her curiosity. She had read the reports. Humans were not as tall as the Zelnari. They were not as strong as the giant reptilian clans, or as fast as the insectoid races. Yet the humans had survived countless dangers on their small planet and had now stepped into the stars. To Lyra, this was fascinating. The sound of trumpets suddenly filled the air. The crowd turned their heads as the great gates of the hall opened. Guards in shining armor walked in first, their weapons glowing faintly. And behind them came the human envoy. At the front was a man, walking with a straight back and calm steps. His uniform was dark blue with silver lines, and a small flag of Earth was pinned to his chest. His hair was short and brown, his skin pale, compared to the golden glow of the Zelnari, and his eyes sharp with focus. Captain Daniel Hayes, the herald announced, representative of the human homeworld, Earth. The hall fell silent for a moment. Many nobles whispered among themselves. Some laughed quietly at the sight of a man so small compared to them. Even the shortest of the Zelnari was taller than him. Warriors from other alien houses looked down at him with pride, certain that such a figure could never be worthy of notice. But Daniel did not look afraid. He walked forward with steady steps, his gaze calm, his face serious. He bowed politely to the Emperor and Empress sitting at the far end of the hall. On behalf of Earth, he said, I thank the Zelnari Empire for this welcome. May this day be the beginning of peace and friendship. His voice was strong and clear. It carried across the hall, making even those who laughed pause for a moment. The Emperor gave a small nod, but many in the hall still whispered. Lyra noticed every detail. She watched closely as the humans took their seats at a long table near the center. Daniel spoke softly to his team, giving them calm instructions. His movements were simple but confident, as if he belonged there even while surrounded by giants. The feast began. Plates of food from across the galaxy were placed on the tables. The nobles raised their voices, boasting about battles won and treasures gained. Some of the alien warriors shouted jokes about humans, their voices loud enough for the envoy to hear. Look at him, one large warrior sneered. He is half my size. If a storm wind came, he would fly away like dry leaves. Perhaps his people are clever, another mocked, but brains without strength are only toys. Laughter spread among them. Daniel did not rise to their words. He calmly took a sip from his cup and gave no sign of anger. The way he ignored the insults seemed to puzzle a few of the aliens who were used to loud arguments and fights. Lyra, sitting at her corner of the royal table, watched everything. Her heart felt a strange warmth. She had been mocked many times for her small body and gentle nature. She knew the sting of being ignored, of hearing laughter from others who believed size was all that mattered. And here, before her eyes, was someone who carried himself with quiet pride, never letting their cruel words reach his heart. As the night went on, a discussion began between the royal advisors and the human envoy. The topic was navigation through the uncharted Nabaris void, a dangerous region of space filled with drifting rocks and shifting magnetic storms. Most nobles claimed that no ship could pass safely. Daniel spoke, his voice calm but sure. With careful study of star charts and by mapping the storm's rhythm, a path can be found. We humans survived oceans and storms on our homeworld. The sky is only another sea. Many nobles laughed again. Words, one of them said. Only words. No ship has ever crossed the void. But then a quiet voice joined the discussion. I believe he is correct, Princess Lyra said softly. The hall fell silent. Few expected her to speak. She rarely joined in such debates, and most had forgotten she was even present. Lyra stood, her golden eyes shining. I have studied the void as well, she continued. The storms follow a pattern, not chaos. If, one reads carefully, there is a safe road hidden in the darkness. Captain Hayes speaks truth. The Emperor raised his brow, surprised. The other princesses looked at Lyra with disbelief. And Daniel? Daniel turned his head toward her and gave a small nod of respect. Your Highness speaks with wisdom, he said. Perhaps if you would allow, we may compare our notes and charts. Together we may solve what others fear. Lyra felt her chest tighten. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not as a decoration, not as a weak flower, but as an equal. The conversation shifted, but the seed was planted. Throughout the evening, Lyra found her gaze drifting to the human captain. He listened more than he spoke. He measured his words carefully. And when he looked at her, it was not with pity or mockery, but with quiet respect. As the feast ended, the guests began to leave. Lyra remained for a moment, standing by the tall crystal windows of the hall. She looked out at the stars, her heart restless. For the first time in her life, she felt seen. Behind her, footsteps sounded softly. She turned to see Daniel approaching. He bowed politely. Princess Lyra, he said, I wanted to thank you for your words earlier. It is rare to find another who studies the stars so closely. Her golden eyes widened. You noticed? Of course, he said. You saw what others ignored. That takes courage. Lyra's lips curved into the smallest smile. For once, she did not feel like the silent flower. She felt alive, as if the universe had finally whispered that she was not invisible. And in that quiet moment, standing by the glowing crystal window, the bond between a forgotten princess and a human captain began to take root. The days after the great feast were quiet, but inside Princess Lyra's heart, nothing felt quiet. She could not forget the human captain. His calm words still echoed in her mind. She remembered the way he bowed to her, not because she was a princess, but because he respected her thoughts. It was something she had never experienced before. In the Zelnari court, no one asked for her ideas. No one cared about her studies of stars, maps, or history. But Daniel Hayes had listened. He had noticed her voice when the rest of the hall had ignored it. That one small moment had changed something deep inside her. Yet she knew this bond was dangerous. The Zelnari nobles laughed at humans. To them, humans were a weak species, only useful for trade. For a princess to show interest in such a being would be shameful. Lyra told herself she should forget him, but her heart refused. Secret. Meetings. The chance came 2 nights later. Lyra was in the palace library, surrounded by tall shelves filled with glowing crystal books. She loved this place because it was quiet, and no one disturbed her here. She was studying charts of the Nabaris void when a soft voice broke the silence. Princess Lyra, Daniel said from the doorway. She turned quickly, her golden eyes wide. He stood there, calm as always, his hands behind his back. Captain Hayes, she whispered. What are you doing here? The library is not open to guests. I asked permission, he said simply. I told them I wished to study your star records. The guards allowed me through. Lyra blinked in surprise. Few ever cared about the library. Most nobles saw books as useless. Yet this human had walked into the one place she loved most. He stepped closer, careful not to disturb the silence. May I? He asked, pointing to the chart spread on the table. She nodded slowly. Together they leaned over the glowing map. Lyra explained the strange movements of the storms in the void. Daniel listened closely, asking questions, pointing out patterns she had missed. For hours they worked side by side, their voices soft, their eyes on the stars. At last, Daniel leaned, back with a small smile. You were right, he said. There is a path through. If the storms follow this rhythm, a ship could survive. Her heart lifted at his words. You believe me? She asked. I do, he answered firmly. Your mind is sharper than many I have met. You see what others refuse to see. Lyra felt her cheeks warm. No one had ever spoken to her like this. She looked at him, her golden eyes soft. Why do you treat me this way? Daniel paused, then said simply, Because you deserve it. Whispers in the court days turned into weeks, and their secret meetings became more frequent. Sometimes in the library, sometimes in the quiet palace gardens, sometimes in the observatory tower where the stars shone like diamonds above. They spoke of science, of art, of their worlds. Lyra told him of the songs of the Zelnari, long chants sung by warriors before battle. Daniel told her of Earth's oceans, blue and endless, and the courage of sailors who crossed them. She laughed for the first time in years when he described how humans danced around fires in the old days, celebrating life itself. But whispers began to spread. Servants noticed the princess disappearing for long hours. Guards saw her walking with the human envoy. Soon the court was alive with gossip. The small princess has found company with the small alien, one noble sneered. She always was strange, another said. Now she lowers herself even further. Even her sisters, tall and proud, mocked her openly. Why waste time with a human? They asked. No great warrior will want you if you continue this foolishness. Lyra said nothing, but inside she felt torn. She knew the court would never accept her bond with Daniel, yet she could not bring herself to stop seeing him. With him she felt alive. With him, she was no longer invisible. A moment of courage. One evening, during a council meeting, the subject of the Nabaris Void returned. Nobles argued loudly, insisting no ship should risk the journey. Daniel stood and presented his findings, showing how the storms followed a pattern. The warriors laughed at him. Your tiny ships may hide in storms, one growled, but no real vessel can pass. Lyra's heart pounded. She could stay silent, as always, and let him stand alone. Or she could risk everything. She stood. He is correct, she said, firmly. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to her. With our combined charts we have mapped the storms. She continued, it is possible. If you ignore this truth, you waste a chance for our empire to grow stronger. The nobles stared in shock. Never had the silent flower spoken so boldly, and never had she stood beside a human so openly. Daniel looked at her, with quiet pride. He did not speak, but his eyes said everything. She had chosen courage. The warning. Later that night, Lyra was summoned to her father, the Emperor. His golden armor shone in the dim light of the throne room. His face was stern. Daughter, he said, you shame yourself. The court speaks of you walking with this human. Is it true? Her voice trembled, but she did not lie. It is true. The Emperor's eyes hardened. You are a princess of the Zelnari. Your duty is to bring honor, not disgrace. This bond cannot continue. You will end it at once. Lyra bowed her head, but inside her heart cried. How could she end something that had given her life meaning? When she met Daniel the next day in the gardens, she told him of her father's warning. Daniel's face was calm, but his eyes showed concern. If this puts you in danger, he said softly, then we must stop. No, she whispered. I cannot. You are the first to see me, Daniel. Without you, I am only a shadow again. He reached out, his hand brushing hers gently. Then we will face it together, whatever comes. The growing storm. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, but so did the anger of the court. Nobles whispered that the princess had betrayed her people. Warriors mocked Daniel openly, calling him a weakling hiding behind a woman's favor. One night at a grand gathering, the insults turned harsher. A tall warlord rose and shouted across the hall. "Human," he roared, "you dare sit among us? You dare steal the gaze of our princess? Prove yourself, or admit you are nothing but a shadow clinging to her pity." The hall erupted with laughter. All eyes turned to Daniel. The human captain stood slowly, his face calm. He looked at the warlord, then at Lyra. "I do not seek to steal," he said softly. "But if you demand proof, then I will give it." The hall fell silent. Lyra's heart stopped. She knew what was coming. A challenge, a trial. And in that moment, she realized their bond had grown too strong to be hidden any longer. The great hall of the Zelnari Palace had never been so tense. The lights from the crystal walls flickered like frozen lightning, and the air was heavy with expectation. Nobles, warriors, and servants all leaned forward in silence, waiting for the human's answer. The warlord who had spoken stood tall like a mountain, his golden armor glowing under the torches. His voice had already shaken the hall. "Prove yourself, human, or admit you are nothing but a shadow clinging to her pity." Daniel Hayes stood at the center of the hall. He was half the size of the warlord, dressed not in heavy armor but in the simple blue uniform of his people. His calm eyes looked first at the warlord, then at Princess Lyra. She sat near the royal throne, her face pale, her golden eyes wide with fear. Daniel's voice was steady. "If proof is what you demand, then proof I will give. I accept your challenge." The hall erupted into noise. Some shouted in excitement. Others laughed at the madness of a human daring to face a Zelnari warlord. Lyra rose quickly, her hands trembling. "No," she cried. "Daniel, do not do this. You cannot fight him. He will crush you." But Daniel's gaze never wavered. "Sometimes," he said softly, "to protect what matters, one must stand, even when the odds are impossible." The challenge declared. The Emperor raised his hand, and the hall fell silent. His golden crown shone as he looked down at the human. "So, be it," the Emperor declared. "Captain Hayes, you have accepted the challenge of Warlord Karath. By our ancient law, this trial will take place tomorrow at the Arena of Honor. Weapons will be chosen by fate. The victor will prove his worth before the Empire." The nobles cheered, their voices echoing like thunder. But Lyra's heart broke. She wanted to scream, to beg her father to stop this madness. Yet she knew it was useless. The law of challenge was sacred. Once spoken, it could not be withdrawn. That night, Lyra found Daniel in the palace gardens. The stars glowed above and the fountains whispered softly, but her heart was heavy. "You should not fight him," she whispered. "He is 3 times your size. He has trained since birth. You cannot win." Daniel turned to her, his face calm. "Maybe not, but if I walk away, they will always say humans are weak. They will always say you chose a man with no courage. I cannot allow that, Lyra." Her golden eyes filled with tears. "But what if you die?" He smiled gently, though his eyes were serious. "Then I die standing for something that matters." For a moment she said nothing, then slowly she placed her hand on his. "Then I will stand with you whatever happens." The Arena of Honor. The next day, the Arena of Honor was filled with thousands of voices. It was a great circle carved from black stone, its walls high, its gates strong. Fires burned in tall pillars, and banners of the Empire waved in the wind. The Maidai nobles sat in the high seats, their jeweled clothes glittering. Warriors gathered at the lower levels, their eyes burning with excitement. Even the common citizens had come, eager to see the human's fate. Princess Lyra sat close to the royal throne, her hands tight together, her heart racing. She could hardly breathe. From one gate, Warlord Karath entered. His massive body shone, with muscle, his golden armor heavy, his weapon a great axe taller than Daniel himself. The crowd roared with approval. From the other gate, Daniel walked out. No armor, only his simple uniform. In his hands he carried a long spear, given by the keepers of the arena. It was the weapon fate had chosen for him. He held it calmly, his steps steady. The crowd laughed at the sight. "A twig in his hand," one shouted. The human will not last a breath. But Daniel did not answer. His eyes were fixed on Karath. The trial begins, the horn sounded. The ground shook as Karath charged, his axe swinging down with the power of thunder. Daniel moved quickly, rolling to the side. The axe struck the ground with a crash, sending dust flying. The crowd gasped. Daniel had avoided the first blow. Karath roared and swung again, the heavy axe cutting the air, but Daniel did not meet strength with strength. He used speed. He slipped aside, his spear darting out like lightning, striking at Karath's arm. The warlord grunted as the tip scraped his armor. Again and again Karath attacked, his strength shaking the arena. Again and again. Daniel slipped aside, his movements sharp and clever. He did not fight like a warrior of muscle. He fought like a sailor in a storm, turning with the waves, letting the enemy's power waste itself. From her seat, Lyra's heart beat wildly. She whispered to herself, "Hold on, Daniel. Please hold on." The turn of the battle, Karath grew angry. His roars shook the stone walls. "Stand and fight, little insect," he shouted. Daniel's voice rang back, calm and clear. "Why should I play your game when you cannot win mine?" The words stung. The crowd murmured. Never had they seen a warrior mocked by a man so small. Karath charged again, swinging his axe high. Daniel waited, eyes sharp. At the last moment, he dropped low and thrust his spear into the ground. Karath's foot struck the shaft and he stumbled forward. The warlord crashed to his knees, his axe slipping from his hands. The arena roared in shock. Daniel moved quickly, his spear at Karath's throat. The warlord froze. Silence fell. Thousands of eyes watched as the human stood over the mighty warlord, the tip of his weapon steady. Daniel spoke, his voice strong. "Strength is not only in muscle, it is in mind, it is in heart. True strength is knowing how to fight with what you have, not what you wish for." The outcome. The Emperor stood, his golden eyes burning. "Enough," he declared. "The trial is decided. The human has proven his worth." The crowd erupted, some in cheers, others in anger, but none could deny what they had seen. A human had stood against a warlord and won. Daniel lowered his spear and stepped back. He did not smile, but his calm face shone with quiet pride. Karath rose slowly, his eyes filled not with hatred but with respect. He bowed his head once before leaving the arena. From her seat, Lyra could no longer hold back. She rushed down the steps, running across the arena floor. The nobles gasped as she threw her arms around Daniel. "You did it," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You truly did it." Daniel looked at her gently. "I told you, Lyra. I would stand for what matters." A defiant choice, the Emperor's voice thundered across the arena. "Daughter, what is this?" Lyra stood tall, her hand still in Daniel's. Her golden eyes blazed with courage. "This is my choice," she said. "He has proven his worth. He is no shadow, no weakness. He is my equal, and I will not turn away from him." The crowd gasped. The nobles shouted in anger. But others, especially among the younger warriors, cheered. They had seen bravery. They had seen cleverness defeat brute strength, and they could not ignore it. Daniel bowed to the Emperor, but he did not release Lyra's hand. "I ask not for your throne," he said, "but for the right to stand beside her with honor." The Emperor's face was dark with fury, but even he could not deny the law of the arena. Daniel had won, and the people had seen it. That day, the bond between the forgotten princess and the human captain could no longer be hidden. Their defiance had shaken the court, and the whispers of change began to spread through the empire. For the first time in her life, Lyra was not ignored. For the first time, she was truly seen, because a human had chosen to stand beside her, no matter the cost, and together they had faced the trial of worth. The palace of the Zelnari Empire was quiet that morning, though the air still carried the echoes of the previous day's trial. The arena of honor, where Daniel Hayes had defeated warlord Karath, remained filled with whispers. Some nobles still shook their heads in disbelief. Others, especially the younger warriors, stared with admiration. A human had stood against one of the greatest warlords of the Empire, and won. Princess Lyra walked through the palace halls, her hand brushing the smooth crystal walls. She had never felt so alive. Her heart was still racing from the trial, but not from fear. This time it was from courage, pride, and the knowledge that she had chosen what mattered. Daniel was not just a visitor in her life. He had become a part of her world. As she approached the royal gardens, she saw him waiting. Daniel's eyes met hers, and for a moment, words were unnecessary. The bond they shared had grown stronger. With every challenge, every conversation, every moment of quiet understanding. "You are awake early," Lyra said, trying to speak casually though her heart was full. Daniel smiled. "I do not sleep much before a day like this. There is much to consider. The Empire will speak. The court will demand explanations." Lyra nodded. "And yet, I will not turn away from you. I cannot. Not after what we have faced." Daniel reached for her hand, gently taking it. "Then we face it together. Whatever comes." The court speaks word spread quickly. By mid-morning, the nobles gathered in the grand hall, their faces tight with anger, curiosity, or both. The emperor entered, his golden armor shining as he took his place on the throne. Beside him stood the empress, calm and silent, observing the crowd. "Princess Lyra," the emperor began, his voice echoing through the hall. "Yesterday, you chose to honor a human, a visitor, over the traditions of our people. Explain this to me." Lyra stepped forward, her hand still in Daniel's. Her golden eyes met her father's, steady and unwavering. "Father," she said clearly, "I have chosen Daniel Hayes because he is honorable, brave, and wise. He sees what others ignore. He values truth, courage, and the good of the people, not just strength or size. I cannot return to being invisible, nor can I ignore the value he brings." The hall murmured. Some nobles whispered among themselves. Many were shocked. No princess had ever spoken so boldly in front of the emperor. "And you, human," the emperor said, turning to Daniel, "do you truly accept this role beside a princess of the Zelnari? Are you ready to face our people, our laws, and our challenges?" Daniel bowed his head respectfully. "I do, Your Majesty. I accept nothing, lightly, but I am ready to serve beside her, to honor your people, and to prove that humanity can bring strength in ways you may not yet understand." The crowd fell silent. The courage of the human, combined with the conviction of the princess, had stunned them. Even the emperor looked thoughtful. Allies and opposition, not everyone approved. The older nobles, especially the warriors, whispered, behind their hands. "This is disgraceful," one said. "A human cannot lead, cannot protect. He is weak," but others were impressed. "He fought Karath and won," a younger warrior whispered. "Strength is not always muscle. Perhaps there is wisdom in their bond." Some of the Zelnari scholars nodded quietly. "The princess is intelligent. She has chosen someone who complements her mind. This may be good for the Empire." In the audience, Lyra felt the mixture of anger and admiration. She squeezed Daniel's hand. "Whatever they think, I do not care," she whispered. Daniel smiled. "Nor should you. We only need to be true to ourselves." The ceremony of honor, to settle the matter, the emperor decided to hold a special ceremony. It was not a marriage, not yet. It was a declaration of bond, a recognition that the princess had chosen the human as her protector and partner in courage. The ceremony took place in the Great Hall, now decorated with banners of silver and blue. Citizens of the Empire, nobles and warriors all gathered. The Empress gave a small nod of approval. The Emperor's golden eyes scanned the crowd before turning to Lyra. "Princess," he said slowly, "you have chosen. You must now declare your bond publicly. Let all the Empire hear your decision." Lyra stepped forward, her small form dwarfed by the hall, but her presence commanding. She raised her voice. "I, Princess Lyra of the Zelnari Empire, declare that I have chosen Daniel Hayes, not because of his size, not because of tradition, but because of his heart, his courage, and his wisdom. He is my partner, my equal, and my protector. Together we will face whatever challenges the Empire has, and we will stand for the people, for truth, and for the future. The hall fell silent for a moment. Then, slowly, applause began. Some nobles cheered quietly, still unsure. Many of the citizens cheered loudly, inspired by the courage of the human and the princess. The younger warriors stood taller, proud of what they had witnessed. Even the emperor nodded slightly. "So be it," he said. "Let all who doubt witness their courage and their wisdom together. This choice is now recognized by the Empire." Acceptance and celebration. That evening, the palace celebrated in honor of the bond between the human and the princess. Music filled the halls. Crystal lights glowed softly on every surface. Dancers from across the Empire performed, and tables were filled with food from every corner of the galaxy. Lyra and Daniel walked together, hand in hand, among the people. Citizens came to greet Daniel, many bowing in respect. Some whispered stories of his bravery in the arena. Others marveled at the princess, once ignored, now standing boldly with a human by her side. Lyra leaned close to him and whispered, "I never thought anyone would see me. Not like you." Daniel smiled. "And I never thought I could find someone like you, Lyra. But here we are, together." The Empress approached them, her calm eyes soft. "Princess Captain Hayes," she said, "the Empire watches you both. Lead with courage, and the people will follow. You have the potential to change everything." Lyra nodded. "We will," she said firmly. A future together days passed, and slowly the Empire began to change. The nobles who once mocked Daniel now spoke carefully, knowing that strength could take many forms. Scholars and younger warriors began to value intelligence, courage, and honor alongside physical power. Lyra's small size no longer mattered. She walked confidently through the palace, her mind sharp and her voice heard. She had found someone who valued her for who she was, and in doing so, she inspired others to see beyond appearances. Daniel remained by her side, learning about the Zelnari ways while sharing human knowledge. Together they mapped new stars, planned new alliances, and showed the Empire that courage and wisdom could unite different worlds. One evening, as the twin moons of Kareth rose over the palace, Lyra and Daniel stood together on the balcony. The city below glittered like a sea of stars, and the wind whispered softly. "Do you think they will ever truly accept us?" Lyra asked, her golden eyes thoughtful. Daniel smiled, taking her hand. "They will, in time. Courage always inspires, and the bond we share, it cannot be broken by doubt or tradition." Lyra leaned into him, her heart full. "I am glad you chose me." Daniel looked down at her with a gentle smile. "I did not choose because I had to. I chose because it was right. You are more than anyone has ever seen, and I will always stand beside you." The wind carried their laughter across the palace. The stars seemed to shine brighter that night, as if celebrating a bond that had changed the course of an empire. The silent flower, once ignored, had found her voice. The human once mocked had proven his worth. Together they had shown the Zelnari Empire that true strength could be found in courage, wisdom, and the willingness to see what others overlooked.